Welcome to MGO Bucks. This is our Sunday show. It's starting to turn into a tradition, one time, 2 weeks Sunday show. But hey, we've got huge news about the Big Ten and the absolute collapse of the Pac-12. Just collapse. Like the Big Ten has changed so much over like the last 2 years. It's just like, my gosh, it's not your grandpa's Big Ten. It's not your uncle's Big Ten. It's not even your big brother's Big Ten anymore at this point. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about Ohio State and Michigan's schedules and how they're impacted based on this. And we're just going to kind of talk about, what does it look like for 2024? We already had schedules for 2024, and they were a lot harder with USC and with Washington. But now you're bringing in, USC and UCLA. But when you bring in Washington and Oregon, my gosh, you know they're going to have to play all of the other top brass in the Big Ten. So our schedules are about to get really tough, I'll bet. Hopefully they add some fairness in there as well. We'll talk about the Ohio State's fourth quarter offense because we kind of touched on that last week. But I still think that's something that needs to be debated, and it's something I'm sure Ryan Day is thinking about. Just that fourth quarter was just horrendous in the last two games last year. And then we'll have our new segment, Epic Moments in the Game, where we'll show a clip from a previous Ohio State-Michigan football game, and we'll talk about that epic moment. Last week, Matt, if you'll remember, we did the 2001 Michigan versus Ohio State game where Jonathan Wells ran for that long-ass touchdown and pretty much broke Michigan faithful's heart for like 20 years after that. But how are you, man?
I'm doing all right. I'm ready to get going. And I it's kind of sad the college football as we know it, it's basically over. I mean, the NIL was already starting to change that, but I thought a lot of the NIL stuff was good because it was sort of spreading the wealth out. It wasn't just Alabama, Ohio State, and Georgia getting top teams. Now we have Tennessee or South Carolina or Florida State, like some of these other schools are getting some of the five-star talent that they weren't before. And, so that's making things more interesting, I think. But the realignment is really just crushing college football, in my opinion. Even though it's helping our division, the Big Ten is going to be very strong now after this. I think it just sucks for college football fans, for people that, you have all those rival. I mean, that Pac-12 has been here for 104 years, and it's gone.
Yeah.
And it's pretty sad for anyone who's a fan of college football as a whole.
Yeah, you know what? And I think like maybe earlier this week, I think I remember sending you a YouTube video of the Bay Area and their NBC News. And I don't know if you had a chance to watch that, yes. But they are over in the West Coast. They are pissed. Like they are just, they're just going down the laundry list of what went wrong. And I don't know it as detailed as they do, but it sounds like the Pac-12 leadership was really at fault there.
Oh, yeah.
It was them. It was like just a litany of bad decisions that led to this. And you have to really, really, like you said, over 100 years, you really have to screw things up to really, mess this up. 100 years of tradition in the Pac-12. Yeah. But guess who just joined us?
Yeah. So
Brian Weaver joined while we're live. How's it going, man?
Going great. How are you guys?
Good. Yeah, been a long time.
Just complaining about how the college football tradition is now officially dead.
It's definitely different. It's gonna be a lot different.
It is, and there is a lot of implications to our teams, Michigan and Ohio State's schedule. 2024 was already looking disastrous for Michigan, having to play USC and UCLA. So I don't know what they're going to do. Brian, I don't know if you've heard anything.
You actually have to play someone.
Yeah. Well,
Michigan actually has to play somebody besides Penn State.
You're right. You're right. I prefer to not have any challenges at least till halfway through the season. That's just what I'm used to.
I really think the biggest change is going to be the implications on the playoff, right? Because the playoff, you're going to have 2-loss Ohio State, in 2-loss Alabama. You're going to get these teams that are perennial powerhouses in the playoffs, and they're going to argue overall resume, including quality opponents, even if it's a loss. So you've got more opportunity now to play more of an NFL schedule, an NFL type schedule. And I think Ryan Day even kind of, I took his comments to mean that when he was talking at the Big Ten Media Days about, you can focus on playing your best football at the end of the season, because you're guaranteed to have 4 or 5 real quality games on your schedule instead of 1 or 2. So when you're talking about the Big Ten specifically, but the Big Ten and the SEC for sure, the Big Ten, a Big Ten schedule is going to be absolutely loaded. So the chances of getting through that undefeated are slim, but with an expanded playoff, you don't have to. You just have to get in, and you've got to be playing your best football at the end of the season. So I think a lot of change is coming down the pike for college football.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's one of the things we wanted to talk about on this show too, is I don't know if you saw Michigan's schedule for 2024. When I first saw it, I panicked a little bit. And when you actually, and here, let me just post it up here real quick. I've got it on a slide. And I don't know if you guys can see this, but I'll read it off to you. Basically, Michigan in the second game plays the Texas Longhorns. Then they go on in midseason to play UCLA. Then they have to play at Ohio State and at USC. And that's not possible. I mean, to play Texas, like that would be fine if we didn't have USC and UCLA in there. That would be a pretty reasonable schedule, pretty good schedule, good off-season schedule. But I kind of have a feeling that Michigan and Texas might, after what we've just happened with Washington and UCLA, or Washington and Oregon, they might just have to say, hey, let's not play after all. Hey, Texas, the gift of no gift. I don't know if you guys have that with your family. That's just what they're going to say. How about we just give each other the gift of no playing?
I would say that even though that looks hard on paper, the timing, I mean, we all know this is changing anyway, but the timing would be perfect for you guys, though, because you have the big name school. So Texas is going to be without Quinn Ewers, and USC is going to be without Caleb Williams. So that's, they're both going to be breaking in new quarterbacks that year. So that's actually good timing to get the name brand without the elite quarterback.
Matt, Texas is back.
Oh, yeah. Well, of course.
Texas is
back. I mean, I almost thought Texas was back until Maryland beat them a couple years in a row, and then we had to put that on the back burner.
Texas has been back for quite a while, but that's still too much. I mean, Texas, UCLA, Ohio State, and USC. I mean, that's at Ohio State and at USC. That's just too much. And they're going to add in Washington and Oregon at some point.
When are we expanding the playoffs? Is it 2024?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the last year of the 14 playoff.
Nate, you're looking at that like you have to run the table. You don't.
True.
You need to be in the top, certainly the top 3, but I would argue the top 2 in the Big Ten. And if we are doing divisions or whatever it is, obviously only 2 teams can play in the Big Ten championship game. But if you're playing, let's say it's USC, right? Don't even worry about the out-of-conference stuff, because that's really not going to hurt you with an expanded playoff. You have to win your conference games. And the biggest ones would be that obviously you've got Ohio State and you've got USC, but there's no Penn State on that schedule. You're playing Wisconsin at home. Nobody else
I forgot about Wisconsin.
On that schedule is really scary.
Wisconsin's going to probably level up a little bit, I imagine.
Yeah, they might, but I mean, it's one of those things where as long as you get to, I would say, we've already seen that the Big Ten has leveled up as a conference to the point where you're talking about 2 teams making it to a 4-team playoff. You will almost certainly get 2 Big Ten teams in an expanded playoff, probably 3.
Yeah, so at least 3, I think.
I really don't think that you have to worry You just want to play quality opponents and be playing your best football at the end of the season. And if they play, let's say it is USC, and you're playing, is it any different if you're playing USC at the end of the season and both of those teams are jockeying for playoff position? It's a de facto playoff game. It's no different than Ohio State playing Michigan now. We thought last year that was a de facto play-in game. So I really don't think you have to worry about that. I think the expanded playoff is going to be much more favorable for traditional powers than people think. Everybody's been saying it's for the little guys. It's not at all. This helps the traditional powers a ton.
Yeah, I mean, the SEC and the Big Ten are getting like 80% of the teams in the playoffs going forward.
Alabama will be in it every year, regardless of how good they are. They would have been in an expanded playoff last year. And Ohio State, will be in it. And I think Michigan, if they really are leveled up perennially, like they look, their certainly trajectory is in the right way, in the right place. And I think bringing in an Oregon and a USC is going to do nothing but help the Big Ten, as far as the quality of their schedule. And I don't think the out of conference is going to hurt them that badly. So I think and as a fan, that's what you want to see. You want to see games that matter every season. Like I'm not looking forward to a lot of Ohio State's schedule this year. I think they're playing some real cupcakes out of conference, and it'll be so much more interesting if you are playing quality opponents for at least half your schedule, year in and year out.
That is true. I mean, and you're right. I was actually going to say too, as a fan, this is a lot more entertaining when they're not playing a cupcake schedule like Michigan's played this year and last year. So if that's the case, and there's going to be a 12-team playoff, right? So you only have to be in the top 12, and if you can't make the top 12, you can't really you can't really whine too much about not being in the playoffs, right? So yeah, there is a lot of truth to that, I think. Let's check out Ohio State's schedule here for 2025. So you guys don't necessarily have a hard non-conference opponent. Looks like you're playing Southern Miss, Marshall, and then you kind of get into the Big Ten, Michigan State. You do have to play UCLA and at Penn State, but and then Michigan, you get Michigan at home next year. So that's a little bit easier.
Matt, that looks like a Michigan schedule.
If you take out the UCLA at the end there, yeah, that I was you beat me to it, Brian. I was going to say that looks very Michigan-like.
I will bet you whatever you want to bet right now that Ohio State's a playoff team in 2024. I will bet you now.
Oh yeah, make your bets.
They will 100% be a playoff team.
Well, we are going to be losing most of our defense that year, so it'll be a little scary.
It won't matter.
And a lot of our offense too. Yeah, I know.
They will, with that schedule, they will make the playoffs.
Well, another thing too, for Ohio State, I think that you're definitely making the playoffs here. But I think for Michigan, that schedule from 2024, they may not actually make the playoffs. I mean, I don't know, Brian, if you've heard this, but Jim Harbaugh just came out and said they're going to have 20 draft picks because they're just going to blow Georgia's overall NFL draft record out of the water of 15, and they could have 20 picks. I don't think I'm buying that, but they are going to lose a lot. And if they've got to come out and play the schedule they're going to play in 2024, I mean, top 12 isn't a given.
It may not be a given, but I will say welcome to big boy football. I mean, this is what Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, these teams, that are perennially in the discussion every year, they have to reload. There's no Georgia's not making excuses. They lose dudes to the NFL every year. Alabama's not making excuses. I mean, they may not have been as good the last couple of years as they were at their peak, but they're still right there. It took two late, game losses on the road to keep them out. So,
and I'm super excited to see what Alabama's going to do this year because their quarterback situation is pretty iffy.
Yeah, I mean it's wild. I mean that whole situation, that whole offense, the whole situation with their offense is fascinating. But I will say, as far as to bring it back to Michigan, one thing they've done really well is attack the portal. They've done a great job in the portal, and they've recruited at a better level than they were. So this year's it looks like their class is a little rougher than it's been the last couple, but they've done you cannot deny that they've done a great job in the portal. You really can't. I mean, they filled gaps, and if they continue to they have another good year this year, they're going to have a lot of momentum. And just to think about where that program is now versus where it was 2 years ago, 2 off seasons ago, it's night and day. But that's what all these teams are going to have. If you're going to be a perennial power, you have to reload. That's just the reality.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of speaking of a little bit of last year, and one of our topics last week was we kind of touched on Ohio State and what do they have to do. I think the question was, what is the most key change they have to make in order to make the playoffs this year? I know defense fell into that. My whole, from what I'm viewing anyway, I was thinking the running game is going to help a lot if they can actually reestablish that. But one thing I think we all probably noticed from last year too is their offense sputtered in the fourth quarter in the last 2 games. And I still haven't been able to wrap my finger around, what it was about the Buckeyes offense in the fourth quarter. What went wrong for them? Trying to, because I think if I'm remembering right, against Michigan, they had 3 points. They scored 3 offensive points in the fourth quarter. Against Georgia, they scored 3 offensive points. I know they didn't have Marvin Harrison Jr. That was an issue. But it seems like I can't put my finger on what's going on with Ryan Day's offense in the fourth quarter.
Nate, you said it right before you asked that question. The thing you said right before it, you got to, against a good team, you have to have a good running game, right? And we have not had a reliable running game all of last year because of injuries and just shuffling running backs left and right. So, we need to get back to the Ryan Day offense where we have a J.K. Dobbins type of a beast that we can ride, and that's how you win in third and fourth quarters. Late on the game, you can go to the well over and over again and just pound them into submission, and that's sort of what Michigan did against us, and that's usually what we have been doing to you guys for 20 years. Yeah,
I remember I went back and I watched, I think it was 2020, and I watched Ohio State against Clemson, and I think it was it Trey Sermon? He had a great game. I mean, he was having a great game there he was having a lot of great games there at the end of the season. And it did seem like he was a big part of that offense, a lot more than I remembered. I was surprised when I saw it. Of course, I'm not a Buckeye fan, so I don't remember things like that.
No, and the one thing I would say, it's a lot more difficult. Red zone offense is hard. It's just harder. At every level of football, red zone offense is harder. There's less space. It's harder to equate the numbers. It is significantly easier if you have a quarterback who is a threat to run the ball. That's why I think McCarthy did a good job. When they needed a touchdown in the Ohio State game, McCarthy got it in there when he needed to. And the ability of a quarterback to equate the numbers is extremely important because those guys at that level, there are just very few teams that can do it without a mobile quarterback consistently. And when you look at Ryan Day's offenses, when they've been the most dynamic in short yardage and in the red zone was when they had Justin Fields. And Fields is a legit running threat at the quarterback position. Now, that's one of the things that's fascinating about where Ohio State goes with the quarterback position, coming out of fall camp. Kyle McCord I think he's athletic enough to do it, but Devin Brown is more of the true dual threat quarterback. And it'll be fascinating because, even Day, it's always hard to interpret exactly what he meant. But he said, we need he basically said, I'm going to, not verbatim, but he basically said, we need a quarterback that plays like CJ did at the end of that Georgia game. That's what we need all the time in this offense. And it just shows you the progression of where that position has gone. It's one of the reasons that you look at the guys that have had success at the collegiate level and are starting to have success at the NFL level. They're not all 6'5", 240 anymore. You know, some of those guys are 5'10", 6 foot, but they're athletic and they are good enough to make the plays. So, you know, that's one big deal. I think one, they have not gotten the production consistently from the offensive line in short yardage and red zone situations that they should have. I also think that your margin for error is much smaller when you don't have a quarterback who's willing to run. And we saw that the CJ Stroud that played against Georgia was not the CJ Stroud that played against Michigan. I don't think he ever showed his legs against Michigan in the 2 years that he played them. So, you know, that's a big part of it. I'm not saying you have to be a runner all the time, but that certainly you've got to be a threat. You got to keep the defense honest when you get in short yardage like that. And so that's one of the things to really watch coming out of fall camp is obviously who the starting quarterback is, Ohio State. That said, I will never worry about the offense at Ohio State. That is not my biggest concern. I think they'll be fine. Granted, they don't have the star power on the offensive line they had last year, but I have faith in Ryan Day. I have faith in Justin Fry. I think they will get it sorted out. And they obviously are much healthier at the running back position, like Matt said. When they were down to a converted linebacker and a true freshman last year at the end of the season. And when it mattered, they had Xavier Johnson, who was a walk-on freaking wide receiver, playing in the tailback position for part of the biggest games of the season. This year, Travion Henderson's back healthy. You know, Mayan Williams will be healthy. Their Pryor's back healthy. They're going to be so much better off at that position, and every other skill position group on that offense is as good as anybody in the country's. So if the offensive line can play better, they are going to be absolutely nasty, even with CJ Stroud gone. And oh, by the way, every quarterback that Ryan Day has coached has gone to the NFL in the first round, and they've had production as soon as first year starters have all been exceptional as well. So I'm not at all worried about that. I think 100% the defense has to play better. If the defense plays up to snuff and Knowles does a better job in bigger games, Ohio State is a legit, not only a playoff contender, but a national championship contender.
So you touched on a couple things there. And before I want to ask you what you guys, both of you, think of your gut feel about who's going to be the next quarterback for the Buckeyes. But one thing I wanted to sort of get out of the way, it is a feeling like, what was your feeling about CJ Stroud and that performance he had? And I'll go to you, to Matt, to you on this, but what was your gut feeling? Like, were you, I'm sure you were happy to see him do that, but there may have been, I thought, maybe a piece of you saying, where the hell was that? I don't know if you guys probably remember 2007. It's one of those years I want to forget, because that's when Michigan lost to Appalachian State, but they sucked. I mean, the whole year they looked so bad for a lot of that year. And all of a sudden, Lloyd Carr says, okay, I'm going to retire. And they go to play Florida in the bowl game. And Florida had Tebow. Tebow had just won the Heisman. They were unstoppable. And then all of a sudden, Michigan comes out throwing, they were running the spread offense. And all of a sudden they start scoring all these points on Florida. And I was like, I was doing yeehaw pretty much the whole time. But after the game, I felt a little dirty, because I was thinking, where the hell was that? Like, all year long, like why weren't they breaking this out? And I don't know, that just kind of reminded me when I saw CJ play awesome like that, because he was probably looking like a second, late first round pick at that point. He was playing for his draft stock at that point, it seemed like to me. I don't know, what were your thoughts about that?
Well, I'll say first, I wanted to touch on a couple things that Brian was saying. You forgot to include the most important person in the quarterback race, Lincoln Kienholz, West Dakota Heisman. I think that guy has. I'm more fired up for him than any of the other two, even though he's super long shot that he's going to start unless they both get hurt. But his game is exactly what you were talking about. I mean, Devin Brown is, would be great with really, I mean, our running game. Can you imagine how good our running game would be this year with 5 proven running backs and a quarterback who can run like Devin Brown? With elite receivers, it's just going to be off the charts ridiculous. But I will say the one thing I am a little bit more concerned about the offense than Brian is, not because of the quarterback, but because I'm still like, even though Justin Fry has a great reputation as being an offensive line coach, we have just been missing on offensive line recruits for years now. And I think it's going to show up this year, unfortunately. I mean, our tackles, really worried about the tackles, man. But I will say also, our talent everywhere else is so high that they just have to be above average. They don't have to be, just don't be terrible and be serviceable. And I think our offense will be good enough to carry them. As for the defense, everyone seems to be super high on the defense, and they should be unbelievable. I mean, we have a lot of talent returning, and some young blood that's going to be coming in this year. Everyone is raving about Sonny Styles. It's like he's the next coming of Jack Tatum or something back there at safety. And, it just seems like everyone is super pumped. But, man, our defensive line has been just straight trash since 2019. So if those guys can actually stay healthy, I mean, I think that's really the big problem. I mean, we have, it's 2 defensive tackles that are monsters, and they're really, really talented. But both of them either have problems staying healthy or problems, with assignment, because neither of the, Tyleik Williams is not getting any. He was barely getting any playing time, and every time he was in there, he was making a play. But for whatever reason, he just wasn't playing very much. And then Mike Hall was, one of the most disruptive players on defense, but he got hurt halfway through the year or something, and the rest of the year he just didn't do anything. So just a lot of this is about health too, like which guys stay healthy. So it's just. This team has so much talent. I don't really see any glaring weaknesses that are going to hold us back this year.
How did you feel about CJ?
And finally,
the
I'll
original
get back to
question.
CJ. Yeah,
I feel like you're trying to evade that emotional trauma.
I will say I was happy to see him play awesome against Georgia, but I was really annoyed at how for 2 years he wouldn't run at all. And I'm not saying you have to run up the middle where you can get destroyed, but when you're rolling out in the pocket and it's 3rd and 3 and there's no one open deep, you don't just stay there and keep rolling until you take a sack. Run and get the 4 yards out of bounds if you have to, where you're not even getting a hit, right? There's no risk to that play. Just get the first down, but he never does that, or never did that until the last game. So for me, it was super frustrating. So again, I have a hard time rooting for people that I feel like they aren't, giving it their all. I see Bryce Young, the guy was going to be the number 1 pick in the draft, and he's still running every play. He could have gotten destroyed and lost his draft stock, but he did it every game, even against the trash teams. CJ only did it once, which is super annoying. And also with JSN, I'm still a little salty that he didn't come back and play, because I feel like he could have. Towards the end of the year, part of it was mismanagement by the coaches, keep bringing him back, and he got hurt over and over again. But by the end of the year, I think he could have probably played in the playoffs, and I think he was just staying out for the draft status because he knew he was going to be a top 15 pick. So even though he's killing it in the NFL now, I'm going to have a hard time rooting for him because I think he, bailed on the team.
Yeah, I'm with Brian. As far as the offense goes for the Buckeyes, I'm not really worried about the offense at all. I have full confidence that Ryan Day is going to figure out the offensive line. He's going to figure out the quarterback that's going to suit the offense. I think Ryan Day, you could tell last year that he favors the running game. I don't think that he has a problem with the running game. It just seemed like that the last 2 years, sort of due to injuries. But with Trey Sermon, he ran the heck out of Trey Sermon. With the first couple games against Notre Dame last year, he closed out those games. He closed out Notre Dame with the run game. Against Wisconsin, he closed Wisconsin out with the run game. And due to injuries,
same thing with
due to injuries, it just fizzled down, and they had to rely on the pass.
No, I think he'll run the ball. I don't think that's an issue. It's just that at some point you have to do whatever you can do to win games. And I think at this level, to win championships, you have to be explosive in the pass game.
Yeah, very true.
I will say, the other thing that frustrates me, I hadn't watched the semifinal game. Hurt so bad. It hurt so badly. I couldn't watch. I didn't watch it I happened to be in a bar a couple weeks ago, and it was on. It was the first time I'd watched it since the game. And I go back and watch them just to see what happened and kind of break it. You know, I like really digging into the schematic stuff. But one of the things that really bothered me about that game was, yes, Marvin Harrison Jr. was knocked out of the game. We all know that. Probably should have been a personal foul. They should have had the ball in the 5, whatever. Point is, with basically 2 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, Ohio State's in the red zone. They had a chance to put that game away. And on that drive, they settled for a field goal because CJ took a horrible sack. And even on the last drive, Georgia goes up, scores a touchdown, goes up. They need a field goal to win it. CJ has the amazing runs, gets them close. But every time that Georgia was really pinned back, Kirby brought pressure. And the two biggest plays of the game at the end, CJ did not recognize where the pressure was coming from and did not find the outlets. In both cases, even 5 yards would have made a big difference. Especially on I think it was a second and 5 in the red zone with 2 minutes to go. And he takes a sack that takes it back to 3rd and 17. And they had to settle for a field goal. That's the game right there. He had a little orbit motion, throw to the flat, and if he would have just taken it, even if you lose a yard, which I think he could have, I don't think they were going to pick up the first down there, but I think that at least would have gotten him close. Instead, he takes a sack. So even in this amazing game that CJ, improved his draft stock and great, he did all these things, and I think he did. He played the best game of his career as a Buckeye. He still could have played better. And honestly, if you just had a quarterback who could identify pressure and hit the hot route properly, they would have won the game. So, it's when you're talking about that level of competition. I mean, just look at Michigan and TCU, right? The 2 pick sixes that McCarthy threw were the difference in that game. Michigan could have won would have been playing for a national title. It's the margins are that close when you're talking about playing at the highest of the high level in this sport. And anything you can do to make that margin for error bigger, you need to do. And if in looking and evaluating your roster, if that's leaning on the run game more, like Michigan has the last couple of years, you lean on the run game. If you've got dynamic wide receivers and that can really get vertical and can do different things, you play with that. If you've got tight ends, you play with that. Whatever it is, you got to find that matchup and you have to exploit it. And that's really where the coaching is so important. And to Matt's point about the one thing with Justin Fry that I'm fascinated to watch is I do think, as good as the tackles were last year, the interior offensive line was a mess. Donovan Jackson was a young guy, made a lot of mistakes. Matt Jones was hurt, down the stretch. I think that they can actually be more solid in the interior line, even if they don't have as good a talent at the tackle position. So I'm not going to say confident, but I'm really interested to see if they can't be better collectively, even though the individual parts are not as good. And if they are, because I mean, look at, I keep going back to Michigan, but the one thing that Michigan has really, really done well is they have solidified their offensive and defensive line play. And nobody thought that they had special talent 2 years ago on the offensive line, but they coached them up and they did a great job. And for 2 straight years, they've been the best offensive line, or arguably the best offensive line in the sport, even though they don't necessarily have a bunch of 5-star guys in that group. So that's what they've got to do. They've just got to be, like you said, they've just got to be solid. If they can be solid, a solid to good group, that there's no real weakness then on that team.
Brian, I
Yeah.
have a question for you. Do you think that against the big runs that Michigan had in the game last year, do you think that was more because of bad play by our defense, missing gaps, versus the offensive line, especially their elite center, making amazing plays?
I think it was a combination of a couple things. I think there was some desperation at that point on the Ohio State sideline, and I think the defense.
Uh-oh, did we lose Brian? Brian, I think we lost you. Uh-oh. Well, I think he was about to say that Michigan is just so plainly awesome that they're probably going to do that for the next decade or so, at least 2 huge runs in the fourth quarter to just salt the game away. I'm sure that's what he was going to say. But until he gets back, let's talk about one thing that we were touching on. I think we all have to talk about what we need to give our gut feels about who's going to be the starting quarterback for the Buckeyes.
Again?
Yeah, I don't think so. We've talked about it, but I need a commitment. I need a commitment based on very little knowledge. So, what is your gut feel about who's going to be the Buckeye quarterback?
Well, I think he's going to be. I think Ryan Day is going to be leaning more towards the running quarterbacks going forward. You look at who we've been recruiting, and that's the change that since we got Kyle McCord a few years ago. The last couple of quarterbacks he's been going after have all been the running quarterback. So I'm leaning more towards Devin Brown until Lincoln can get seasoned a little bit more. He's going to be the truth, but until he's ready, I think Devin Brown is going to make the running game just unstoppable.
So you've got Devin Brown. Okay, Brian. That's all right. When you were out, I put Matt on the spot about who he's picking to be the Buckeye quarterback this year. Just gut feel. Definitely going to hold you guys to it later on and point fingers if you're wrong, but just gut feel on what are your thoughts on who's going to be the quarterback?
I'm gonna be really boring here and say I think McCord is the quarterback because he's been in the system so long. I really think he will be, but I wouldn't be surprised if Devin Brown has a role. It kind of reminds me a little bit of what Michigan did a couple years ago as they were easing McCarthy into it. I don't think that they'll just leave him to rot on the sideline and then wait for him to transfer. No, I'm not saying it's just. Hang on, I'm sorry. Dogs are freaking out here.
They're excited.
It's just quality podcasting here. But I think that I don't think they'll just leave him, to rot as the backup and then hope he doesn't transfer. I think they obviously like him a lot, and it's clearly a close battle. So and I have enough confidence in Ryan Day and the system that they've got in place that whoever they pick, even if it is Devin Brown, they're going to have some success. I do think there's something to be said for somebody who's been in the offense as long as McCord has been. And he did get a start and he played pretty well. So I think he's fully capable of being a really good quarterback. I think he's got the ability to be a pro.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going with Kyle McCord too, Brian. I think that he's going to win it, just because I think, and I don't know if here's maybe why I feel this, and it might be recency bias, but I do feel like Ryan Day likes if he had a choice, he would take a polished passer over a guy who's a pretty good passer and could also run. I feel like he would do that. I may be wrong about that. He might go with Devin Brown, and maybe Devin Brown's an awesome passer. Heck, we don't know yet. But in my mind, I have a lot of faith in Ryan Day too. I don't think that there's any chance the Buckeye quarterback, whoever it is not going to be all Big Ten at least. I mean, that's like the floor for any Buckeye quarterback in that offense with Ryan Day and all those receivers and all the talent. I know they have some issues on the offensive line, and I don't think that that's going to be a huge issue, at least maybe not until they play towards the end of the season and they're playing the tough games. But they're going to have a lot of time to work that out before they get to those tough games. So I'm sure we'll get to our picks against Notre Dame in a later show. I don't see them losing to Notre Dame. I just don't. A lot of people are probably going to pick Notre Dame in that game, and I'm just never going to. I'm going to have to see them actually beat the Buckeyes. Hey, I'm going Team McCord. So we've got 2 McCords and 1 Devin.
Lincoln's still in my heart, though.
Exactly. All right, Brian, are you still with us?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, awesome. So we started a new segment to close it out. It's called Epic Moments in the Game. And last week we started that out. We actually played the clip of, and you'll probably remember this, Jonathan Wells running for that 4th down play for that long touchdown against Michigan at Michigan. It was Jim Tressel's very first game. And of course, you remember how that happened and then the decades that ensued. But it's awesome. I love actually playing some of these old clips, some of these epic moments and talking about them and saying, like, where were you? Heck, I remember where I was at every single Buckeye versus Michigan game. But it's a new segment that we started, and we have one today to close this out. So I am going to share my screen. We're going to play a play.
Is it Barrett first down? Because he did get the first down.
What's that?
Was it the JT Barrett first down? Because he got the first down.
That might be a play sometime later after I get over it. I'm still not over that yet. It's still a little too soon for me. But yeah, exactly.
Real quick on that game. If we do that game at some point, the play that, if I were a Michigan fan, the play I would actually be more mad about than the first down. The question about the first down is the play before that, because they ran this. I think it was a crazy reverse play, and I think it was Paris Campbell that got him close. They got him down where they could go for it on 4th down. There is one of the most blatant block in the backs you will ever see in football that was not called on that play.
Really?
Yes, it wasn't even close. It should have been a penalty. Ohio State never should have had the chance to go for it on 4th down.
Oh,
so that's the one I'd be pissed about.
You're
now
putting even more salt in
tonight.
Nate's wound.
I know. All right, here we go.
Timeouts. Had some men running open deep down the field throughout this half. Of course, Robinson.
Oh!
He bounces off some hits, and they will not catch him. 67 yards and a touchdown.
Name the year.
Brady. Let's see.
Yeah, I was going to say it had to be the said 2012 on there, so it cheated.
Yeah.
It had to be the
Well
one.
done.
The only thing I remember about this game, wasn't this the one that this was the year before Urban took over, right?
This was his first year.
Okay, so it was the year before that when he was in the booth for that game, and he basically said he would never throw the ball if he had Denard Robinson. They just run.
That was the year
Let's go
before.
back
But
to the beginning. Yeah, let me see that one.
let's look at this play again.
Go all the way back. Go all the way back to before the snap.
Oh, 2 Buckeyes just colliding.
There's no doubt he was a great runner. That wasn't a question. I'm just so what's weird about that whole play is I don't think you even read it right.
And also number 7, Travis Howard. The thing
It's power that they're in the diamond formation.
So
Go back to
when
the
you don't
pre-snap,
wrap
Nate.
up, when you have the strength of
Check that out.
Robinson, he will run through that.
Yeah, man, that's rough. When he was throwing a knockout and he hit his own guy. I hate that. Just get the tackle, man. I mean, you basically gave up the touchdown because you went for the knockout shot. Can you go back to that one though at the beginning? I want to see the beginning of that formation.
Oh, the very beginning?
Yeah, just the very beginning, just the pre-snap look.
Sure.
Because I didn't see what the down and distance was either. What was the situation in that game? In the game,
So they're on about the 38.
Go up just a skosh there.
I don't think I can scroll up.
No, can you just go forward. They showed the down distance. Okay, it's third and is that third or second?
Second and two.
Second and 2 from the what was the distance? Go back.
Second and 2 from the 38.
So they're on their own 38.
Yep.
So go back a little bit.
The blocking, he had a convoy.
Yeah, and what's weird is go back again. Keep going back. Okay, so they're in. So you're basically in diamond formation. So you've effectively got what turns into 8 blockers. But a lot of times in diamond, it's a handoff, or they're doing some kind of mix. So I'm a fan of this play. So this formation, first time I ever saw it was Oklahoma used it a bunch when Lincoln Riley was the offensive coordinator. But they would mainly either throw out of it or run power to the running back. It wasn't a quarterback run. So they're basically running quarterback power out of this. But what's weird is then the running backs basically, I believe he's basically running as a pitch man. So when you go, and so they're basically against, effectively 7 in the box. The safety's trying to drop down late, but they're way leveraged over. You can see when I think that's Boren, that's the linebacker towards the middle of the screen. Once he steps inside, there's nobody but that safety. And if that defensive end down here by the X there on the field, if he gets reached, it's all over because it's just the leverage of this formation. And that's what the diamond does to you, because you can't tell just based on pre-snap alignment where the formation's going. But this was really well done by Michigan, and he waits. So I can't when you play it again, I don't think he faked it like he was going to do it a handoff. I think what he was doing, he's waiting for the back at the top of the screen to come under. So then he's basically got pulling. They pull the offensive lineman. Then you've got that power motion out of the backfield, and then the running back. At first, it threw me off. I didn't know what he was doing, but I believe he comes down. He's basically a pitch man. So if someone does come up to hit the quarterback, then he's got it turns into speed option. It's a pretty good play design, and they got him out leveraged.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, they pulled the guard.
Yeah,
a lot of human beings coming at you.
Yeah.
So when Boren missed the angle, it was all over. Now this, catching him, he's too fast. That's a really nice play design.
It was interesting because the two guys that hit him, it's almost like the one guy was going for a knockout shot, like you said. The other guy coming from the other side was actually trying to tackle him. But the knockout shot actually knocked his own player out, so he couldn't actually get it. It was just a crazy epic play. So that deserves to be one of those epic plays, even though Michigan lost this game.
Well, I always remember that game. Isn't that the Boren? That's the standing over top of. Was that the game? Was that the game?
I can't remember. I think that was the year after.
That's Gardner. Yeah, because it was Gardner. It
was Gardner. And Gardner and Shoelace both played in this game as quarterback. And I think looking back on that a long time ago, I was thinking they should have just picked someone. But I know they wanted Gardner to play too because he's talented, but they really should have just picked a quarterback and went with him.
Gardner was terrible. The level of quarterback play that they have now compared to then, even though I'm not the biggest McCarthy fan, the level of quarterback play that Michigan's got in the last couple of years versus what they've had in the Arbaugh era, and that whole era is crazy, man. Gardner was 11 for 20 for 171 yards, a touchdown and a pick. Denard Robinson had 122 yards rushing on 10 carries. He was averaging 12 a carry. Of course, it helps when you get a big one like that one, but man, that's crazy.
Sure. Even
Braxton Miller had 18 passing attempts. That's some Urban Meyer football right there, dude. We're running it 50 times.
Yeah, and there's another year that should have been Ohio State actual national title.
No, I'm still pissed off about the way they handled that whole.
That was BCS.
And all that
Gene Smith cost him the title because he didn't ban himself in 2011 like they should have. And then, they almost certainly would have let him play in the bowl game in 2012, and then we would have got Notre Dame, and Notre Dame was a joke that year. So
that's right, because didn't Alabama just absolutely house them?
Oh, they did. Alabama lost a game that year. I can't remember how.
That was the easiest national title ever.
I would have been so pissed if I were an Alabama fan, because I think Alabama was better than Ohio State that year. Ohio State wasn't quite all the way there yet.
Yeah.
No, that's
Still,
true. I mean,
Notre Dame didn't even belong there. Notre Dame's a joke.
Yeah, for sure.
Get ready for that with the expanded playoffs. Notre Dame will be in it every freaking year, rather than.
Oh, actually, I was going to ask you guys about Notre Dame. So I was wondering. So Notre Dame keeps getting these lucrative deals with NBC every time their contract comes up. But what's going to happen when all these conferences change? I mean, who knows if the ACC is going to continue, or if they're going to get? I think they had to get 50% of their members to opt out and get out of their contract, which I think goes to 2036, which is one of the worst TV deals ever signed by anyone. They're barely getting paid anything, and they're stuck for forever now. And so, is Notre Dame going to finally join another conference here, or are they going to? Because how are they going to get this major deal when they, who are they going to be playing when all the conferences are going to be realigning? There's just going to be these 3 super conferences, and then there's not going to be anyone left for them to play. I don't know. It seems like they're going to have to finally join one of the other conferences here shortly.
It's a huge question, Matt. I think, if it is true that the ACC teams are locked together in perpetuity, then Notre Dame's the only one that makes any sense. That, if Ohio State's going to expand, or I'm sorry, not Ohio State, the Big Ten is going to expand to 20. I don't think they're going to take any more teams from the West unless they absolutely have to get to 20. Like if it were Notre Dame, and let's say they can't get any of the ACC teams, and there's nobody else in the South that is intriguing to them, then I could see if Notre Dame did join the Big Ten, that maybe they go after a Stanford or something.
Stanford, that's what a lot of people were saying, that they were trying to get Stanford to lure Notre Dame.
There's no reason to go after Washington State or Oregon State or any of the other teams. And the Big 12, there's no one left in the Big 12 that really moves the needle for anything in the Big 10. I don't think any of the Arizona schools do, or they would have already tried to go out and get them. So, I would think eventually, especially in light of what's just happened with the rest of the Pac-12, that at some point Notre Dame joins the Big 10.
At some point, we've been saying that, but now that you're right, maybe NBC actually has some sway with Notre Dame now that they actually have a contract with the Big 10.
And I mean, you talk about, it's crazy because it's basically the SEC is the South, including the Texas and Oklahoma, and everybody else that matters is going to be in the Big 10.
Yeah, unless
California.
The Big 10 figures out how to get Florida State or Miami or Clemson, but those teams seem like SEC teams to me.
Yep.
What, Nate? Who did you say seemed like an SEC team?
Florida State, Clemson, and Miami. If I was going to pick big conferences for them.
I mean, like Matt said, it's going to be extremely, extremely difficult for the ACC, for any ACC team to get out of that conference. If that conference stays together at all, I think it's like $400 or $500 million is what they were estimating it would take one of those teams to get out of that. Because they all just signed basically another commitment to the end of the TV deal. Like Matt said, it's 2036. So they're not going anywhere.
Oh, my gosh.
I don't think Florida State or Miami or Clemson are going anywhere. So it's crazy. But I think the ACC and the Big 12 will be fighting for relevancy behind the SEC and Big 10. And the crazy thing is the Big 10 has a much bigger geographical footprint and and population, quite frankly.
It is. Well, guys, I have to let us go. I, of course, have Love Island USA to watch again tonight. Same reason I had to leave last time, but it's not something that I'm willing to miss.
Nate, you got to get a blue jersey, man. Those Mays Michigan jerseys are the ugliest things ever. They're horrible. It looks like a Notre Dame jersey from here, man.
It does.
Oh, come on.
It was an Adidas. It had an Adidas symbol on it. I think you were rocking the gold Notre Dame. That maze was all maze horrible. And Michigan fans
The all
want to
maze.
try to talk smack about the all gray, Ohio State alternate uniform.
Not me. I like those.
Sweet. Those all maize uniforms do not look good.
The all maize with a maize shirt, maize pants. Yeah.
Horrible. We gotta
Yeah, those are some of the worst uniforms ever created.
Matt, we gotta buy him at least a blue jersey.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, maybe I'll switch it up a little bit. This has been with me. It's number 3. It's my Marlon Jackson jersey. So that's how old it is.
I know we got to get going, but I loathe lists like the ranking lists. I think they're the stupidest things ever. People put those things out when there's nothing to talk about because it's the summer, right? But I happen to see the Pro Football Focus college football player rankings. Did you guys see these things?
Yeah, I thought.
And Blake Corum's like ranked 3rd or 4th on the list. And he's not even the best running back on his own team.
I know. Well, you know why? It's because he's had, according to their rankings, he had like the highest ranking of, I think the third highest or something all time. Like it was a 96.3 ranking, which was even higher than like Chase Young and Will Anderson and those guys that had a 96.
Okay,
so
but he didn't play against anybody. Like when the Michigan had their biggest games, Quorum was out and Donovan Edwards played hurt and played much better.
So when did he get hurt in the Illinois game? How early in that game did he get hurt?
It was right before the second half.
Yeah.
Okay, so he didn't. I mean, Illinois was the best defense they played last year, and he didn't even finish that game.
Blake Quorum ripped apart the Illinois defense before he got hurt. Ripped it apart. And I'm going to have to go ahead and sort of like disagree with the Blake Quorum Donovan Edwards one, because I feel like Blake Quorum is the better pure running back between the two. I feel like Donovan Edwards is probably going to get drafted higher because he's so good at catching the ball. I mean, he's a really good running back too, but he could be a wide receiver. I mean, they throw deep to Donovan Edwards, and it's just such a huge benefit, at least in the NFL. But I feel like if I truly believe if Blake Quorum was healthy versus TCU, they would have had a much better chance of winning that game. That dude can run when there's imperfect blocking, and Donovan Edwards can't really. And I am not sure if you look at Donovan Edwards' 2 runs against the Buckeyes. I don't know why. I can't look at that and say Blake Quorum couldn't have done it. They have about the same speed, the straight line speed. And it was really just, if they picked the same hole, both guys were going to probably come out in the exact same situation with a touchdown.
I mean, part of that's vision. I mean, that's why he has a full yard per carry better average than Blake Quorum did.
Yeah. And Michigan ran the heck out of Blake Quorum and just pounded the rock with him. Literally, everyone knew Blake Quorum was getting the ball all year long. On every play, he got it. And he was still getting 4, 5, 6 yards. So I think he's a better pure running back than Donovan Edwards. But Edwards is just so versatile. He's probably overall more talented. But Blake Corum's definitely the better pure running back. The guy's shiftiness in the pocket is just legendary. It's just sick.
Well, either way, I still think the game plan against Michigan is still the same as I thought it was before, when we were doing the preview show before the Michigan game, that eventually you put the game in J.J. McCarthy's hands and see if he can win it. In the TCU game, he cost him the game.
Yeah.
There's no other way to say it. I mean, Michigan's offense was moving plenty well. I think the play calling on the one first drive was silly, going for the fake field goal stuff and all that. Isn't that what they did on the 4th down? And was a field goal, or they went for it on 4th down on that first drive against TCU and it blew up on them. And then they had the 2 pick sixes and just nonsensical stuff. Like that's still going to be your Achilles heel. But they got 2 legit running backs. I just think, to me, I'm always going to err on the side of the more dynamic guy. Like even for Ohio State, as much as I love Chop, and I think Chop was the better running back last year, TreVeyon Henderson was hurt. TreVeyon Henderson is a home run hitter, and he will get the first, he'll get the lion's share of opportunities because he can house it anytime on any play. And that's, I think, the way I feel about Donovan Edwards. If I were Michigan's offensive coaches, he'd be my number one guy.
Yeah, and Travion's also a good receiver too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Travion, speaking of him though, he's got next level speed. Like Donovan Edwards and Blake Quorum are about the same. They have about the same speed, but Travion's on a whole other level. That guy will just outrun everyone. Like Blake Quorum and Donovan Edwards get caught from behind, and no one's catching Travion from behind. So, and I remember him as a freshman. If he can put it all together and even just have that level, like just have a freshman level year this year, that's going to be huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you got to use those guys in the pass game too. That's the way that the game is evolving. And when you see a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs get drafted as highly as he did, obviously was a really good running back. But if you watched Alabama last year, he was by far their best offensive pass catcher. He was their best all around weapon.
Yeah.
And it's a constant matchup problem when you have a guy in the backfield who can catch passes against linebackers in one-on-one coverage, and then can just knock over safeties. Like that's you just need players like that. You got to have tight ends that are matchup problems, and you got to have running backs that are matchup problems. And you look no further than the semifinal game. Georgia used both against Ohio State. Brock Bowers is obviously a problem, and they hit a simple running back screen that went for a touchdown. It's not like you got to get real complicated if you got weapons on the outside. It's still, I cannot wait for this season to see how these teams progress, but I really can't wait for that Ohio State-Michigan game, because I still think that Michigan, they know their identity and they do it really, really well. But if you force them out of that and you make them throw the ball, I can do it consistently enough, because I don't have faith in their weapons outside. I still think their wide receivers are pretty weak. They got some decent tight ends, and I think their running backs are obviously, top class. But and McCarthy.
Brian, have you heard McCarthy's supposed to be like generational quarterback, the best that Harbaugh's ever seen?
Look, he's good, man. He's a good quarterback, and I will say, I think, just in having paid more attention to football and on every level, from Pee Wee football all the way up to the NFL, the level of coaching that these guys are getting now at the quarterback position, I mean, they're just getting better and better and better. And quite honestly, you want to talk about a program that has leveled up at the quarterback position? Look at Penn State. Penn State is taking two really, really good Ohio quarterbacks. And Drew Aller, if that dude is legit, Penn State could be a program that we were talking about at the end of this season. Like, oh wow, they really stepped up, and it could be one of those. It could be a program that knocks off one of Ohio State or Michigan. They're good. It's a solid program now. I have no faith in James Franklin when it comes to actually, winning. Out coaching somebody in a game, but they've hung with Ohio State.
They have some really, really good talent this year.
They really do, and Aller's legit. So, I think McCarthy's a really good quarterback, and it's fascinating that when it comes to Ohio State and Michigan, that basically Ryan Day could have had J.J. McCarthy and Donovan Edwards if he wanted them, but those weren't the guys that he picked. So then they went to Michigan, and all they've done is kick Ohio State's ass 2 years in a row. So it's time. He chose McCord over McCarthy. So this year is a big indictment on that decision. I don't think there's any question about it.
Yeah, it is. And we'll have to see if McCarthy can learn to throw consistently too. I mean, that's going to be his growth potential. He's being tabbed as a first-round pick, which doesn't surprise me, because it's like the NFL will take anyone that has like really good measurables and has like a really good arm. But so that doesn't surprise me. But it'll be interesting to see if he can actually clean things up and actually hit deep balls consistently, not just against Ohio State.
Well, and a lot of that is, I still can't believe Anthony Richardson went in the top 5.
I was just going to bring him up.
I cannot believe that. But, a lot of times it's the plays, it's not the Sports Center plays. It's just the routine plays that move the chains, that make things happen when you make good decisions. It's not turning the ball over. It's not putting the ball in harm's way, that he has to get better at. I think it's not his physical tools, it's his decision making. And there were the TCU game is one that if he wants to develop to the next level, he's be watching that over and over and over again, like that, the out route with the defender breaking underneath like that. I can't make that throw to the field side. I can't do that. I can't take these risks when the game's on the line, when we're dominating a game. We have the chance to blow it open. And I think that was one of the things that, looking back at, I think both Michigan games from the Ohio State standpoint, and CJ Stroud particularly, I think there was a little bit of hesitancy to take opportunities when you need to force the ball. And that's really the balance of that position. It's so hard. I mean, that is such a hard position to play at a high level. And I mean, you're talking about dudes that the starting quarterback for Michigan and the starting quarterback for Ohio State should be going to the NFL. They should be in the conversation for the NFL every year. That's just where
very true.
Georgia's. It's crazy because these teams that consistently replace their quarterbacks, like you would think having a starting quarterback for a big program would give you a leg up at winning the national championship. Not necessarily. A lot of teams, Georgia's done it. Alabama does it all the time. I mean, if you're a high level program, a first year starting quarterback is you can still win it all with a first year starting quarterback. So, there's no excuse. And if a guy's not performing, you better have a dude behind him who can. It can't be resting one guy when you're talking about, getting into playoffs and winning the championship every year.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'll leave you guys with this. If Kyle McCord plays the way I think he's going to play this year, it is very, very possible he's one and done because he's got all the measurables. He's got the pedigree. He's got all of that offensive firepower he's got to work with. The NFL, the way they act this year.
Plus, Lincoln
I
would have beat him out in the offseason anyway.
I love it.
What's that?
No,
I said Lincoln would have beat him out in the offseason anyway, so he's leaving just so he doesn't lose his draft stock.
Nate, I'm 100% with you. I think he will. I really think that he will be. And when you look at the fact that Travion's gone, Mayan's probably gone. Marvin Harrison Jr. is probably gone, or more than he's 100% gone. Emeka Egbuka is 100% gone. And those guys played. He and Marv played high school ball together, so they're obviously really tight. They came in together, and not that matters, but you don't have to stay and be a fifth year senior to go in the top 5 anymore. You can be a 1 or 2 year starter and get drafted high. It's just really how your season went, and he's obviously this is the program a long time. He'll be prepared.
Yep, he is. I think he's going to do great, and the offense he's in.
The one problem though is I did read that the stats on quarterbacks that only started 1 year and then went to the NFL are really bad.
Sure, yeah, but I mean, I think if you looked at the stats on most quarterbacks going in the NFL, they're going to be bad.
Yeah,
it's really hard. I mean, seriously,
and
there are 32 teams, and you're lucky if you have a top 15 quarterback. And if you get one of those, you're set for the next 15 years. And if you don't, you're constantly looking. So there's just no guarantee. That position is just so hard to play at a high level. It's crazy. I mean, even at a high school level. And the crazy thing is, like, the gap between high level high school and college isn't anywhere near. It is the Grand Canyon from high level college to the NFL, if that tells you anything. That's why these kids that are coming to high school now, you got freshmen who are, if they played in the same kind of system and they've been doing 7-on-7 and they've got their own quarterbacks coaches all through high school, they are prepared when they hit college that it's not completely they're not over their skis entirely if they come in and have to play right away. You still see a lot of guys wash out, obviously, but I'm just saying that gap between high-level high school and college is not that big. The gap between high-level college and high-level NFL production is the Pacific Ocean. It's enormous, and it takes really, really special talent or a lot of time and a lot of breaks and a lot of luck to develop a top 15 quarterback. It's just a really hard. I really think it's the hardest position in sports, especially to play at that level. It's insane.
I'll bet it is. Now that you're athletic too. I mean, it takes a unicorn to become an NFL quarterback at this point. So Totally agree. All right,
All right,
guys.
so look forward to talking to you guys next week when we have, 2 less conferences that have imploded and like 20 more teams added. We'll see what that looks like.
Whoever was talking about the high low with where you can relegate, God, that would be awesome. Like I think American sports needs relegation 100%. If you had a Big 20 and you had the top 10 teams and then you had the bottom 10 and the lowest 2 drop out and the bottom come up every year, it'd be awesome. I think that's one of the coolest things about European sports, where they're like, "Oh, you're a trash team? Yeah, you're going down a level."
Yeah,
That is really cool.
All right, guys. Well, thanks so much. Great talking to you. We'll do this again real soon. Thanks everyone for watching. Please like and subscribe, and we will talk to you soon. Go Blue.
Go Bucks.